Let's unpack this. Today we're embarking on an ultra-long, incisive, and really fascinating deep dive into an ebook. It promises nothing less than a red-pilled guide to personal transformation. And it also offers, well, a critical look at the history of our institutions, at least from the author's perspective. Before, he argues, they were, quote, captured by feminists and Marxists. The book we're exploring is Alchemy of Adversity, a red-pilled guide to personal transformation by Conrad Riker. And our mission for you, our listener, is basically to distill the core ideas and maybe the most surprising facts from its pages.
Yeah, there's a lot in there.
Definitely. We've sort of custom-tailored this deep dive so you can get the knowledge quickly, but, thoroughly, without feeling overwhelmed by just the sheer volume of info.
It's a dense stuff.
It really is. And Riker doesn't present this as just like another self-help book. No, he frames it more as a war doctrine, almost like a battlefield manual. Specifically designed, he says, for men who refuse to kneel.
Strong position.
It is. So before we jump deeper into these powerful concepts, do us a quick favor. Please like this deep dive, subscribe for more profound insights like this one, and when you're ready to maybe forge your own path using the lessons from this book, you can find Alchemy of Adversity on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
Places to look.
Yeah. Also, for more of his work, which is pretty compelling, be sure to follow the author, Conrad Riker, on Substack. His handle is @Conrad Riker.
Okay.
So right off the bat, the book throws you into the crucible principle, which is, a powerful way to start. It fundamentally suggests that weakness isn't destiny.
Right.
It's more like raw material,
Right.
ready to be transformed. How does Riker actually argue this transformation happens?
Well, what's fascinating, I think, is how Riker immediately redefines suffering. It's not an endpoint, not something to just endure. He calls it alchemical fire.
Alchemical fire. Okay.
Yeah, he presents adversity as the actual catalyst for strength.
Yeah.
And the book gives some compelling examples. Individuals who, according to Riker, really weaponize their suffering. Nelson Mandela, for instance. Riker highlights his prison cell not as just confinement, but as a forge, right?
Forge.
Where Mandela apparently exercised rigorously every day and, amazingly, drafted South Africa's reconciliation framework on smuggled paper. That's the claim.
Wow.
But it's not just historical figures. The book tells this modern story too. John Smith, a hedge fund manager.
Right, the one jailed for accounting errors.
Exactly. And supposedly, while inside, he used contraband sticky notes to code a logistics app.
And sticky notes. Seriously.
That's what Riker writes, and claims he secured $10 million in seed funding right after release. So the core insight here, beyond these, powerful anecdotes, is that Riker really views adversity as a strategic resource. He pushes you, the reader, to see every challenge, no matter how crushing, as raw material.
Raw material for building something stronger.
Exactly, for forging a stronger self. And this whole process, he gives it a name, adversity compression.
Right, that trademark term.
Yeah, he describes it as almost like a thermodynamic process, where this intense pressure transmutes trauma into diamond-tier clarity. He even cites historical Stoics like Boethius and Epictetus as, living proof of this.
Finding clarity in suffering.
Profound clarity amidst profound suffering, yeah.
So if suffering is this alchemical fire, what does this really radical perspective mean for, personal failure? Most people see failure as a huge setback.
Right, devastating usually.
But Riker seems to completely flip that script. He argues it's actually a critical step toward mastery.
Exactly, and Riker doesn't just, theorize about it. He backed this up with some powerful real-world instances he presents. The book radically reframes losses. They aren't personal defeats, he says, but critical data points.
Data point.
Yeah, take Daniel Cates, the poker player. He reportedly lost, $2 million in one night? Huge loss. But instead of quitting, Riker says he quantified every single loss. Turned that raw data into a $500,000 per month algorithm.
Transform the loss into a system.
Precisely. And this radical reframing, it extends even to moments of complete devastation. Thomas Edison's lab fire in 1914 destroyed prototypes, everything.
Yeah, I remember reading about that.
Riker quotes Edison as famously saying, "Thank God all our mistakes were just incinerated."
Wow. So seeing even destruction as a clean slate.
That's the perspective Riker puts forward. Failure isn't an ending, it's essential data. The book really urges you to adopt almost a forensic mindset towards your setbacks.
Analyze the loss.
Yeah, analyze every loss, not as some personal flaw, but as critical input for refining your strategy, turning every stumble into a precise step towards mastery. And this perspective, it's deeply woven into what the book calls blood iron grit later on in chapter 15.
Blood iron grit.
Where controlled suffering and physiological mastery are key. For a modern example, Riker talks about a tech CEO who reportedly solved a massive, like $10 million engineering problem during his 5th day of fasting. Riker argues hunger can be a whetstone for the mind.
Sharpening focus through deprivation. Interesting.
Sharpening focus, problem-solving abilities, yeah. That's the idea presented.
Okay, this leads us into where the book gets, well, particularly provocative. It really delves into what Riker calls red-pilled reality, asserting that basically much of what modern men are told is a carefully constructed lie. How does Riker argue this matrix of lies actually functions in our daily lives?
Well, Riker's analysis of modern institutions, it starts with a pretty stark critique of social media.
Okay, social media, not surprising maybe.
From his perspective, it's not just a platform, it's a tool of control. He quotes a Marine, quite controversially, describing social media as digital boot camp for soy boys.
Wow, okay. Strong language.
Very. Arguing that algorithms are designed specifically to weaponize distraction and, in turn, contribute to anxiety spikes, specifically, he says, in male users. The book takes this even further, claiming, and I quote Riker here, the same tech billionaires pushing mindfulness apps profit when your attention span dies screaming.
So a direct conflict of interest alleged there.
That's the claim.
Yeah.
Riker links this to a purported MIT study, we should note, it's purported, where 72% of male users reportedly experienced anxiety spikes after binging on what he specifically calls male guilt reels.
Male guilt reels.
Okay.
So for Riker, the takeaway is you need to view these platforms with deep skepticism.
Exactly. View them as instruments that, according to him, actively undermine masculine resolve. That's the core argument.
This deep dive then moves on to unmask what the author terms gender heresy. He states this is about smashing the Gnostic lie that he claims has allegedly captured our institution.
Right.
Can you maybe unpack what Riker means by the Gnostic lie and how he ties it into these institutions?
Yeah, and just to be clear, this section contains some of the book's most controversial claims, and Riker uses very, very strong language throughout.
Understood. We're reporting what the book says.
Exactly. So the author asserts this Gnostic lie is a kind of foundational deception. He claims it disconnects individuals from their inherent biological reality and purpose, especially, he argues, for men. And he illustrates this with examples that he contends are evidence of this institutional capture he talks about.
Okay, like what?
Well, Riker recounts the case of an Ohio high school biology teacher, purportedly fired for simply stating men can't menstruate. The school board allegedly called it hate speech. That's one example he gives. The book also highlights the James Younger case in Texas, a father whose son, according to Riker's account, was secretly being transitioned by his mother. The court reportedly ruled it educational malpractice.
Okay, these are specific cases he's citing.
Yes, and Riker doesn't just share these stories. He then claims that gender clinics made something like $300 million last year, just from puberty blockers. He's suggesting a profit motive behind what he sees as this Gnostic lie.
Financial incentive driving it, in his view.
That's the argument presented. The book goes even further, likening top surgery to a new lobotomy. It cites detransitioner stories, like Curabell's lawsuit against the Tavistock Clinic in the UK, as evidence of what Riker flatly calls medical experimentation on children. Again, just relaying the information from the book here. Riker attributes this whole trend to something he calls augmented Gnosticism. He describes this as a multi-billion-dollar annual industry that is, in his specific view, manufacturing dysphoria to sell false salvation.
And linking it to big pharma.
Directly linking it to pharmaceutical profits, yeah. So, from Riker's perspective, the crucial takeaway for you, the listener, is to question these dominant narratives about gender and identity. He views them as a deliberate subversion of biological truth, driven by specific agendas and, well, financial interests.
And, as if that wasn't enough, the author argues that a key part of this institutional capture he describes is through the manipulation of language itself,
Right.
which he controversially calls linguistic castration. What examples does the book provide to illustrate this point?
Well, this really raises an important point about how language itself is being used as a battleground, at least from Riker's perspective.
A battleground.
Yeah. The book gives examples like a Texas jury reportedly fining a man, James McAllister, $8,000 for homeschooling his sons using Cicero's
Cicero. Why?
because, according to Riker's account, the prosecution called Latin hate speech against non-binary identity.
Latin as hate speech. Okay.
It also mentions the University of Michigan allegedly fining a physics professor $500 for using he instead of z in class. These anecdotes, for Riker, they're not just isolated incidents. He sees them as deliberate acts of linguistic warfare.
So a conscious strategy.
That's how he presents it. The book's view is that replacing terms like mother with birthing parent, or using terms like chest feeding, these are attempts, he argues, to erase humanity, to sever language from biology in order to reshape reality itself.
Oh.
Riker's core insight here seems to be controlling language is like the first step to controlling thought and ultimately controlling reality. He really urges the reader to be vigilant against these linguistic shifts, viewing them as a direct assault on objective truth.
Okay, so moving beyond critique now. The book does provide a blueprint, right, for reclaiming what Riker calls Adamic dominion and the vital fatherhood mandate, especially in a world that Riker believes seeks to pathologize male strength. What exactly does Riker mean by Adamic dominion?
Well, Adamic dominion is a really foundational concept in the book. Riker defines it as this innate, powerful leadership and creative potential inherent in men. He argues men need to reclaim their rightful place and strength in a world he claims seeks to pathologize it. And the book offers some stark examples of what it frames as like systemic betrayal of these male instincts.
Betrayal? How so?
Riker highlights a Marine veteran, for instance, stopped a school shooter in Denver, but was then allegedly terminated for toxic masculinity after the shooter's mother sued him for emotional trauma. That's the story Riker tells.
Terminated for stopping a shooter.
According to the book, yes. Another example he gives is a divorced Texas dad who reportedly lost custody for teaching his son how to split firewood. The judge apparently ruled it dangerous gender stereotyping.
Splitting firewood. Dangerous.
That's the claim in the book.
Okay.
Riker sees these as deliberate attempts to dismantle male agency. He goes further, criticizing modern pop culture's portrayal of men. He draws this really sharp contrast between, say, 1944's Captain America punching Nazis.
Right. Classic image.
And 2022's She-Hulk twerking with Megan Thee Stallion. He frames this shift explicitly as an example of psychological warfare aimed at men.
Psychological warfare.
Yeah. The overarching message Riker seems to convey is that traditional male roles and strengths are under attack, and reclaiming Adamic dominion means actively resisting these cultural pressures and reasserting what he sees as natural masculine leadership.
The book then dives really deep into the fatherhood mandate. That's chapter 9. Riker presents fatherhood not just as, a personal role, but a civilizational one.
You beggar.
Arguing that cultural Marxists, in his view, deliberately undermined it to create, quote, governable men. What evidence does he offer for the profound impact of fathers?
Well, what's fascinating here is Riker's argument, which he claims is backed by scientific evidence, about the tangible impact of involved fathers.
Tangible impact.
He states that brain scans reportedly show boys with involved dads grow prefrontal cortexes, that's the part tied to good choices, self-control 23% thicker by age 15.
23% thicker. That's significant, if true.
If true, yes. For Riker, this isn't just a minor difference, it's a fundamental developmental advantage. He contrasts this with things like the Amish Rumspringa ritual.
Where they get tools and responsibility.
Exactly. 14-year-olds given hammers, significant responsibility. He contrasts that with modern schools that, from his perspective, have replaced practical shop class with emotional literacy training.
Practical skills versus emotional skills.
That's the contrast he draws. Riker expands on this too, arguing that manual tasks actually cause dopamine spikes 3 times higher than beating video games.
Really? Higher than video games.
That's the claim, creating a powerful incentive for productive engagement. He sees a major problem with what he calls severing boys from the sacred chain of masculine transmission through this lack of trade skills and practical responsibility.
The sacred chain.
Yeah. So the core insight here is that Riker believes a strong, engaged father is absolutely crucial, not just for individual boys, but for the very fabric of society. He urges men, to actively reclaim and embody this fatherhood mandate. He sees it as a bulwark against societal decay and a direct path to raising strong, capable men.
Okay, shifting gears slightly again. The book also offers a pretty stark look at what it calls the betrayal economy, showing how to survive institutional deceit by understanding how systems are, as Riker puts it, rigged. How does he illustrate this perceived deceit in modern systems?
Riker points to several quite compelling instances of what he views as institutionalized deceit. He notes, for example, a LinkedIn internal audit, which purportedly revealed that 67% of tech workers admit to lying on their resume. He labels this institutionalized fraud, not just, individual dishonesty.
Systemic lying, basically.
That's the implication. He also contrasts Martin Shkreli's, widespread vilification.
Farmer Pro.
Right, with Elizabeth Holmes's initial, very positive portrayal, suggesting, from his perspective, that Holmes specifically used feminist symbols to sell her scam.
Interesting angle.
The book also cites a Google engineer who allegedly leaked documents, purportedly proving search algorithms boosted far-left content. And then, according to Riker, this engineer was labeled a psychological safety risk by HR.
Labeled a risk for leaking.
That's the claim Riker makes. So for Riker, the takeaway is really clear. Don't trust the systems blindly. He actually advises listeners to implement something called a dead man's switch protocol.
A dead man's switch? For what?
For encrypting and auto-releasing evidence. He argues that verifiable facts and footage are like modern plagues against institutions that thrive on controlled narratives.
Using truth as a weapon against deceit.
Essentially, yes. The core message of this betrayal economy chapter is to cultivate a deep skepticism towards established narratives, and to understand that many systems are, in the author's view, designed to mislead. It requires personal vigilance and a strategic defense of truth.
So, if institutions are, as Riker argues, captured and deceitful, what's the actual solution he proposes?
Right, where's the way out?
The book proposes eternal brotherhood as a kind of Masonic resistance blueprint, suggesting strong male networks are the antidote to this institutional capture. How does Riker suggest men can actively build these vital brotherhoods?
This really raises that important question, yeah. How can men actively resist and build genuine connection in this kind of climate Riker described? He highlights an NIH study, first off, which reportedly confirms men in brotherhood groups live 7 years longer.
7 years, just from being in a group.
That's the claim cited, emphasizing the real physiological benefits of strong male bonds. He also points to a specific example, Detroit's Fortitude Forge.
Fortitude Forge.
A group of former Marines, he says, which cut local crime by 44% using a kind of Roman decuria system, demonstrating the practical, real-world impact of these organized male networks.
Wow, 44% reduction is huge.
It is, and the book looks to history for inspiration too, highlighting how George Washington and Paul Revere activated a pre-existing Masonic network for the Boston Tea Party. Riker describes it as an exemplary model of coordinated action against perceived tyranny.
Existing networks for resistance.
Exactly. Riker also credits the Amish. He says they built a formidable $6 billion furniture empire without Zoom meetings, suggesting they achieved this by resurrecting old, 18th century barn-raising tactics, prioritizing trust over contracts. This, for Riker, is proof that decentralized, trust-based brotherhoods can create powerful, resilient systems outside the established institution.
Trust over contract.
Interesting. The book then emphatically declares that brotherhood isn't built on words, but blood, bourbon, and Bitcoin.
Blood, bourbon, and Bitcoin.
Asserting that shared struggle and loyalty are the true building blocks. He cites this powerful example of 3 felons in Alabama. Their security firm now apparently clears $40 million.
Built by felons.
A business, Riker contends, built entirely on loyalty and shared struggle forged in adversity. So the core insight here is that Riker views these robust, trust-based male networks as the ultimate antidote to what he sees as systemic betrayal and institutional capture, offering a path to sovereign living and collective resilience.
Wow. Okay, so this deep dive has really only scratched the surface of Alchemy of Adversity. It's definitely a book that doesn't just inform.
No, it does more than that.
It challenges, it provokes, and according to its author, it really aims to arm you with the tools to navigate a complex world. And, well, reclaim what he believes has been lost.
Yeah, and if we try to connect this to the bigger picture, Riker offers a perspective that feels both, ancient in some ways, but also urgently relevant to today. From transforming personal suffering into actual purpose, to dissecting these pervasive narratives of our time, and then outlining a path to reclaim individual and collective strength against what the author calls societal capture. Conrad Riker provides a really comprehensive, definitely provocative blueprint for transformation.
Absolutely. So if you're ready for an ultra-long, incisive, and let's be honest, really fascinating read that promises to challenge your assumptions and maybe equip you with a new mindset, Alchemy of Adversity by Conrad Riker is waiting for you. It's on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
Worth checking out if this sounds intriguing.
Definitely. And remember to like this deep dive, subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content like this, and make sure to follow Conrad Riker on Substack. That's at Conrad Riker for ongoing insights directly from the author himself.
Good call. And the book leaves us with a challenge, doesn't it? Riker states that weakness dies childless. Resilience. It writes its name in blood, sweat, and legacy.
A powerful closing thought from the book.
It really is. What will you choose to write?